Director of the World Affairs Council of Washington, and on behalf of the Council, I'd like to welcome you all here this evening. Al Jazeera, the word means island in Arabic. Al Jazeera News Network is the network that official America loves to hate. Based in the Gulf state of Qatar, Al Jazeera began broadcasting in 1996 and gained international prominence with its coverage of the war in Afghanistan as the only TV station with a 24-hour satellite link in Kabul. Josh Rushing is a 15-year veteran of the United States Marine Corps and as a captain gained prominence in America in the major motion picture documentary Control Room, which features his struggles as the U.S. military's lead spokesman during the invasion of Iraq in 2003, in a series of conversations with an Al Jazeera correspondent. He left the Marine Corps after he experienced conflicts with the Pentagon following the movie's release, and is now working for Al Jazeera English as a military and current affairs correspondent. His career change led to hate mail, accusations of his loyalty to the United States, and even death threats. Yet he perseveres in his belief that misperceptions and misunderstandings on both sides of the Arab-Western cultural divide fuels his ongoing conflict. His first book, Mission Al Jazeera, Build a Bridge, Seek the Truth, Save the World, is his first book. And tonight he will share his comments with us about the book and about his personal journey from CENTCOM to the Al Jazeera newsroom. Please join me in welcoming Josh Rushing.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's probably my last book, too. Unless I figure out how difficult it was to write, maybe try it again. But I guess I should start by telling you maybe what Al Jazeera is and what Al Jazeera isn't. Or maybe I should tell you what it was like, my personal experience. I have to say, I'm not sure I fully realized what I had done in terms of going over to Al Jazeera after I left the Marine Corps, until I found myself in Washington, D.C., explaining to people that we're starting a new Al Jazeera, and I'm shooting test shows for them. And test shows are called pilots. So I would try to find guests for these pilots. And if you've never called anyone in Washington, D.C. and said, well, I used to be a Marine, and now I'm shooting pilots for Al Jazeera, and seen what their response is, you don't fully grasp what Al Jazeera means to people in America. But how I came to learn about Al Jazeera was as a Marine officer, as a spokesperson. It was one of the networks that I would go on during the invasion of Iraq, before the invasion of Iraq. I will first tell you what I saw firsthand. I thought Al Jazeera showed beheadings. I thought they had some kind of association with Al-Qaeda. But what I saw firsthand in their newsroom was that what I thought I knew about Al Jazeera, which I think is in line with what most Americans think they know about Al Jazeera, was wrong. And that the way the American government dealt with Al Jazeera, or didn't deal with it, was dangerous. Dangerous to America's own strategic interests. And that's because here's what Al Jazeera isn't. They don't show beheadings. They never have. It's in their code of ethics. They never will. That's a complete myth. I think the myth got started because the first videotape beheading to come out was Daniel Pearl. The tape was sent to Al Jazeera, and I'll talk about why they received the tapes a little bit later on. But the tape was sent to Al Jazeera, and they aired the first portion of it, the same portion that Western media aired of Daniel Pearl, Nicholas Berg, and all the other tapes you've ever seen the first portion of on Western press. But it was reported, because it was the first time one of these tapes had been shown, any portion of it had been shown, it was reported in the American press with headlines that read, Al Jazeera shows Daniel Pearl beheading tape. Now, if you were to read the whole story, you would realize they only showed the first few minutes verifying that this was, in fact, Daniel Pearl. They did not show the ghastly end to that tape, and yet that myth has taken on a life of its own in America. Secretary Rumsfeld even has said it numerous times in the press, which is a horrible thing for America when he does that. Because all the people who watch Al Jazeera in the Middle East, and as far as I can tell, and I've been there numerous times, a lot of people watch Al Jazeera in the Middle East. The numbers say 35 to 55 million people, but the truth is it's probably a larger number, and that's because they watch it in community. They watch it in the barbershops. They watch it in the restaurants. They watch it in public. So it's impossible to gather how many people are watching one TV set. But the number is probably greater than 35 to 50 million. I mean, Thomas Friedman said about Al Jazeera, it's not just the largest news channel in the Middle East, it's the largest political movement. It's a phenomenon there. There is no equivalent to it in the English world. But, so when Rumsfeld goes out and says Al Jazeera shows beheadings over and over again, and then that's played in the Arab press, and everyone who watches Al Jazeera all the time knows they've never seen a beheading on Al Jazeera, they believe that Rumsfeld knows better and he's lying. They're not going to give him the benefit of the doubt as if he's mistaken about it, particularly when he's done it for so long. So he's lying. And if he's lying about that, what else is he lying about? And if he's lying about it, the American government's lying about it. So what else are they lying about? So your integrity, your credibility is kind of like water in a bathtub. You pull one little plug and it all goes out. So when Rumsfeld goes out there, and I think he thinks he's advancing American interest on some kind of informational operational front by undermining Al Jazeera and saying that they show beheadings, what he's really doing is making a liar out of all of us, the people in the Arab world. So that's dangerous. Your officials should speak nothing but the truth. And this is easy to prove, whether they've shown a beheading or not, because media libraries around the world have copies of everything Al Jazeera's ever aired. So you can pull out the date that any one of these tapes came out. And they're not anonymous tapes. Each one has a name and a date. And you can go to the media library and you can pull out what Al Jazeera showed. And you will see they've never shown a beheading. Fortunately, the government stopped saying that now that Rumsfeld's out of office. I thought, as most Americans do, that they had an association with Al-Qaeda. But what I learned by looking at what Al-Qaeda says about Al Jazeera is that Al-Qaeda has called for attacks against Al Jazeera and the government of Qatar for, get this, being pro-Zionist, for being pro-Western. Many Arabs had never seen an Israeli until Al Jazeera aired interviews with Israeli officials. Because before Al Jazeera, you didn't have free press. You had media that was owned by the government. Well, if the government doesn't recognize the nation of Israel's existence, then they're certainly not going to have Israeli officials on the news talking. So for many Arabs, the first time they saw an Israeli was when they saw it on Al Jazeera, with them giving the interviews in Hebrew nonetheless. So Al-Qaeda has bashed them for being pro-Zionist. Al-Qaeda in Iraq has bashed them for being pro-Westerner because they don't show the insurgency there as a jihadist movement. And there's been great debate about that publicly on the insurgent sites in Iraq. So for Al Jazeera, if you're stuck in the newsroom and you have the U.S. government that says you're the mouthpiece of Al-Qaeda and is bombing your bureaus, and you have Al-Qaeda saying that you're pro-Zionist and pro-Westerner and is calling for attacks against your network, for them, that means they're doing something right. It's their own perverse sense of fair and balance. If you're pissing off both sides, you must be doing something right. So this is what I saw. The other thing I saw was the pictures, the video on Al Jazeera was different than what I was seeing in the American press. It was, at the time in 2003, without a doubt, gorier, bloodier, more difficult to watch. And having gone up into Iraq, into Baghdad, having been to Iraq a few times now, and seeing what war looks like firsthand, it was a much more accurate portrayal of what war really is than what I was seeing in the U.S. So, in seeing those things, it made me realize Al Jazeera isn't what I thought it was. Well, what is Al Jazeera? As I said before, it's the engine that drives the trend, that drives the debate in the Middle East. It's phenomenally important. So as I'm engaging on this level with Al Jazeera, I realize this is where the government needs to be. I mean, this is where the marketplace of ideas is. This is where people are debating the very ideologies that are fueling this much bigger thing than just the war in Iraq. But my problem in Central Command, where I was a spokesperson, was that they in no way wanted to deal with Al Jazeera. At one point, I asked General Tommy Franks to call on the Al Jazeera reporter first at a press conference. He was sitting front row center. Omar El-Asali was his name. He was a very progressive reporter for Al Jazeera. And Tommy Franks' response was, sure. Right after I rip off his head and shit down his throat. That was his attitude toward just simply giving them the first question. I mean, I wasn't asking them to, take them into his private office and give them a one-on-one.